tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So just continuing our exploration, weaving through this beautiful practice of Ānāpānasati. Coming back to this this third grouping in the instructions, the third tetrad. So for review, again, like we were just talking about, this is an oral tradition, so review. My first Zen teacher, Joshu Sasaki, when he was giving his Dharma talks, which were called Teisho, he would say, well, we've been I thought perhaps we could make some progress, but there are a couple of new people here, so I think we have to start back at the beginning. But of course, there were always new people there. And so he always started back at the beginning. And some of the teaching for those of us who hung out for many years was like, dude, when is he going to get it past the beginning? And, and then we could get all Zen and be like, oh, it's all beginning. You could make any profound thing you wanted out of that. But it is also true that he actually just kept repeating the same teaching again and again. And at times that was frustrating. And at other times not. So if that's your experience with me, it's all beginning. And, I hope it's not too frustrating. So here's the review. The steps of Ānāpānasati, mindfulness of breathing, begins with setting up the body in a comfortable upright posture, bringing the breath to mind, being aware when the breath is coming in and going out. And then the tetrads, or the sequence, begins. It's tetrads because it's 4 groups of 4. So the first 4 are long breaths, in and out, and then short breaths, in and out, and then breathing aware of the whole body, and then releasing the bodily formations, or letting bodily constriction and impulse settle. So the first tetrad connects us with the body and the breath, brings the breath into the whole body. This is the primary energetic practice, is breathing with the whole body. And then letting go of any initial tensions, really as much tension as we possibly can, and letting go also of the impulse toward movement, so settling into stillness. The second group of instructions, the second tetrad, begins with the cultivation of a kind of bodily or somatic rapturous energy called piti, translated as rapture, or bliss sometimes. I like rapture. And then a subtler form of pleasure, sukha, or ease. So cultivating rapture, bright energy through the body, and then cultivating ease or happiness in the body. And with those as a foundation, coming into contact with the content of the mind, and then letting that content settle. So this is the parallel to breathing with the whole body and then settling the impulses and patterns in the body. This is coming into contact with the mind stuff. It's called citta sankhara, the formations of the heart-mind, and letting them settle or bringing them to stillness. Similar to the body, this means not following impulse. So the impulse to fantasize, the impulse to spin story, called papancha, the proliferating mind, not following that, not indulging in narrative or image, letting those go by. So you let the body settle and the mind settle. And then the beautiful third tetrad, which really completes the process of settling into deep presence and rest. The third tetrad, beginning with experiencing the heart, or the heart-mind, the citta. So previously there was connecting with the citta sankhara, the formations in the mind. You could think of that as the content of the mind. If the mind is a thinking and feeling organ, you come into contact with the content first, right? If I say notice your mind, likely the first thing you do is you notice your thoughts, right? That's sort of like saying notice the process of seeing, and you say, well, I can see, my bookshelf and the altar and the wall and the trees and the lights. But that's the content. That's the things you're seeing, the objects of sight. But there's the seeing itself. And so there's the citta sankhara, the stuff of the heart-mind. And then there's experiencing the citta directly, or more directly, in step 9. So there's experiencing the citta. And again, for review, citta is this beautiful, it's a word referring to this beautiful concept that is the combined heart and mind. The Thai forest tradition tends to translate this just as heart. The English translators in the forest tradition translate this as heart, to differentiate it from the thinking mind, which has its own word, manas, or mana. So citta is more the whole inner sense, the whole cognizing, feeling, emoting sense, or emotional processing sense, the citta. And it's also, in a way, the knower, so the one who is knowing experience. So experiencing the citta, and then the gorgeous step 10, gladdening or uplifting the citta. We talked about this a bit a couple of weeks ago, but we lost the recording. So here's a review of that. And hopefully the recording isn't lost this time. The step 9, experiencing the citta, is, for me at least, and I think true for many folks that I've talked with, it's one of the more mysterious of the steps. How do you come into contact with the knowing quality itself, or with the heart absent its content? So when I see people I love, I feel the emotion of loving them. I feel a kind of upwelling of energy and a kind of a shift in my whole energetic mood space. And we could say that's in a way the content of the heart. That's the experience of the heart. The heart, and we could say, what's actually happening there? I see my partner, my child, my dear friend, my family member, and in a way, I think this is a beautiful place for practice. When you see someone you love, or if you're in some other situation where there's a kind of deep heart delight, and maybe it's like, seeing something really beautiful. You go out to the ocean. We were out at the ocean the other day, out at Salt Point, seeing just the afternoon sun on the ocean, and the shimmering of the water and the waves and the clouds and the rocks and the seals. And it's just beautiful. There's seeing the beautiful. So that's related. But there's something more when the heart opens further with emotion around something. And there's a kind of, I just love this. Or I'm deeply delighting in this. You can feel those shifts of being. And that's, this is partly the feeling of all of the Brahma-viharas, of loving kindness, compassion, empathic joy, and equanimity, is the experience of the heart becomes colored by these extraordinary or gorgeous qualities. And there is a meditative state called the beautiful. It's not one of the Brahma Viharas, although they are beautiful, but there's a state itself called the beautiful. And so you might find yourself in that at some point. You might know it well. All of those states are qualities of the citta, qualities that can color the citta. Some of them are wholesome, some of them are unwholesome, of course, if you find yourself very angry. For all of these, we can do a practice where we first, and honestly, most of us are just working on this for many, many decades, so no blame. But where we first actually try to just experience the emotion fully. Can I really feel love? What does love feel like? Can you describe it without getting too abstract, poetic, imagistic, but can you describe it as sensation, as energy, as a shift in presence? What is delight? I think this is partly why a few steps back in the sequence we are asked to cultivate rapture and happiness. Because you want to really know what those states are like. You want to understand them, and also you want to hang out in them a lot. Like you want to cultivate them as an abiding, as a nourishment. So with that as a foundation, right? Next time you see someone you love, you feel love, notice it. There's the seeing of them. It's pleasant. There's some kind of vibration or shift in your energy. And you can do that for both pleasant and unpleasant and wholesome and unwholesome, which are not exactly parallels, states. Right? So if you feel suddenly anxious, you could notice the object of the anxiety. I'm afraid about this deadline that I have, or this thing, or a conversation that I'm in, or a drama that's going on. Something is bringing anxiety. There's that kind of object of it. And then you can notice the feeling itself, which is still content. You can be like, oh, there's tension, there's vibration, there's heaviness, there's a constriction in the solar plexus or the belly or something. Again, this is all kind of somatic process, but it's still all citta sankhara in a way. It's the content or the formations of the citta. Now in step 9, we're asked to experience the citta itself, and that means shifting from really feeling loving or delighting or fearing or being angry or wanting, all of that kind of emotional content, to feeling the organ, as it were, that is doing the experiencing. What is it that knows happiness, or that knows anger, or that knows wanting? Can you experience the citta? And it's not so easy to do so, right? But a standard kind of practice, right, would be you get as close to it as you can, and then you go toward the subtler and toward that which you don't know as well, but that's always there. So like, I feel my mood. This is sort of the main practice that leads to this. You feel your mood. That's like experience the citta sankhara. So that's, that's step 7. And then, the pathway into just experiencing the citta itself, it can go directly, step 7, 8, 9. It's like experience the formation. Okay, I feel, I feel a little bit of happiness and interest. Those are formations in the citta. That's my mood, right? And then, or I feel the thoughts around that. I'm interested in what we're doing. I'm liking it. Okay. And then I let that settle. I let the thinking part and the more gross level part of that settle. I let the story settle. And what's going to be left is is sort of the aroma or the radiance of the mood. You know, if I let all of the specifics settle, like the fact that I enjoy what we're doing, let the content go, so settle the citta sankhara, step 8, then what's going to be left is the knowing of that, and it's going to be colored a little bit by the mood, because the mood's going to linger. Even after a thought goes away, the mood lingers, right? If you subdue anxiety a bit, there's still a little buzziness. You're not quite landed for a little while. And so then you've got kind of the afterglow of the content. You keep settling and letting go. And keep being curious about what's here. And one way to do that is to turn toward that, the knower. This is a classic practice in many traditions. This is part of the Dzogchen tradition, the Mahamudra tradition. What is it that is knowing that mood? Or what is it that's colored by the energy of anxiety or happiness? It's not random that the pathway into this is not open mindfulness. It's not notice any emotion and then trace it back to its, like back into pure awareness. It's notice the positive, and even you start off with the somatic positive, rapture, and then the subtler positive of happiness and ease, and then you let it still and trace it back to the citta itself. It's just such an easier and more liable to be successful pathway to go in through pleasure than to go in through pain. Pain is, I think, more appropriately processed back in steps 3 and 4 with the breath and the body. To actually work with the breath and the body to release pain somatically and let that settle and cultivate actual rapture and happiness in steps 5 and 6 without blowing through, trying to go directly to the heart-mind, right out of, anxiety in the body, buzzing, and all of the things. So come in through pleasure if you can. And then there's just the knowing, and it's colored by a little pleasant feeling. And we've been settling and relaxing, which is pleasurable anyway, if we have access to that. And so experience the citta, and then, in case you didn't get it in the steps of rapture and happiness, then step 10 is gladden the citta, uplift the heart-mind. This gladdening the citta it's not just, it's not a repeat of rapture and happiness. Those, in a way, are still citta sankharas. That's content to bring into the body and mind. Cultivate somatic rapture, somatic thrill, and cultivate emotional ease, non-anxiety. That's rapture and bliss, piti and sukha. Gladdening the citta is more like, once we've really simplified down to this, kind of as close as I can get to being present with the presence nature of the heart itself, then and I here is always in quotation marks, right? But there's a subtle intention as I work through the steps. When I get to this point of just letting the whole thing become more buoyant. I said a couple weeks ago that was Ajahn Sucitto's metaphor here, like a boat that's lifted off a sandbar by rising tides. There's just a kind of inviting and welcoming of the heart-mind to become more buoyant, brighter. And then this leads into the next step, which is samādhi. Immerse the citta in samādhi. The pathway we took tonight in the meditation is very much a pathway that, whether you're doing it in lying down posture as we did, or in the upright posture, you can really use these steps, work these 16 steps in this like a style of deep rest, where the pathway to this point, really into samadhi, and it's true into the fourth Tetrad as well, which we'll get to. I'll start it up next week. The whole thing is, release, release, release. But in the process of releasing, it's not just, like the Ajahn Chah quote, let go a little and you get a little peace, let go a lot, you get a lot of peace, let go completely and you find complete peace. It's not just a simplistic instruction of like, let go and then let go some more. That sounds good, but it doesn't take into account that there's really the layers of constriction in our being. It's not linear, and you don't just sort of let go of one and then let go of the other, like as if you could just work your way down. One of the things I love about this sequence is that it understands that you have to start with the body, and only from the body can you work toward emotions in the mind. It also understands that the body and the cognitive field, the cognitive emotional material, are different. They're different steps. They take different kinds of contact to allow to settle, which also means integrate. But the whole sequence has the tone of letting go. And as you let go, there's things that you need along the way, right? So it's not just release everything. It's kind of like, connect, expand the breath into the whole body, and then let go through the body. But then fill the body with pleasure and nourish the heart with happiness and ease, and then let go through the mind. Right? So there's these waves. There's like bodily energy, cultivate bodily energy, and then let go. Cultivate somatic and emotional energy, and then let go further. And so here with experience the citta and gladden the citta, this is another of those waves of like, now we're pretty subtle, but bring a wave of uplift here. And then that brings us into samadhi. And this is a helpful meditative instruction, whether or not we feel like we're close to classical samadhi or not. But even at any point in the process of settling, as we are resting and getting the mind concentrated, it's very likely that you'll sometimes find yourself in what's called sinking mind. Sinking mind. And this is traditionally one of the meditation traps. And the trap is that concentration and energy are out of balance. If concentration, which also means tranquility or resting, gets strong, but there's not that much energy, if you don't just fall asleep, which sometimes also happens, you can get into a state, and I've spent a lot of time in this state, and sometimes it's hard to even notice. It is hard to even notice you're in it sometimes because the quality of the state is lack of mindfulness. But you have some concentration. The mind actually gets kind of quiet, but it also gets dull. And it's not really seeing clearly, and sort of thoughts can kind of swim around in the background, and you don't quite have the chi to interrupt them or bring them to stillness. There's not enough rapture, and there's not enough breath energy. And so you can actually kind of hang out in this sort of like warm, analgesic bath of dull, mildly pleasant, meditative mush. And so that's called sinking mind. And it's no problem, don't stay there for a decade, but it's a little energetic imbalance. And when you find yourself there, the diagnosis of that is you're like, I think I was concentrated. Like, I think I was actually pretty quiet. But what was happening? Like, it's kind of a wash. Like, I don't really know what happened in there. That's a sign that there was some sinking mind. Because proper samadhi is quite cognizant. It's quite luminous. You know what's happening. even if things are very, very quiet, you know you're quiet. You know exactly what the mind is doing. You notice when a thought even begins to arise, and it doesn't erupt into, it doesn't blossom into story or image, because there's so much mindfulness and presence that it kind of just pops. Because the silence is so compelling that a thought just, you don't even care what it was. You are, the rapture is strong enough to keep you not distracted and not dull. And so part of why rapture is actually important in the sequence, and happiness, is that we're all bloody exhausted, I think is one way to put it. And concentration without the brightness of breath energy and a bit of rapture can just be kind of soporific. So you've come through rapture and happiness and then settled the mind. That's the sequence. Then you contact the citta, and citta is so subtle. Like, connect with the knowing quality that pervades, experience. You could be like, what? I don't know what that is. Like, sure, it's here all the time. It's like saying, like, connect with the spaciousness that pervades all form. And you might be like, I don't know, my room's a little cluttered. I don't know, I don't feel much spaciousness, So the citta itself is fairly subtle in terms of touching. It's here all the time. You can contact it in any moment that you're awake. But I think this step of gladdening the citta also serves this function of protecting us, getting us out of sinking mind if we've started to sink in this kind of deep rest direction. And it's like, gladden, brighten, remember, wake up a little, And here you might, even if you've been getting super, super chilled out, if you feel there's any fogginess, it's almost like come back to step one, long breaths, and take a really deep, slow breath. And just, sometimes I'll take a really deep breath and I'll just hold it for a while, like as long as I can. And I'll let the energy once again get a little vibrating and bigger. And then a long exhale, release the body. And notice that, like, a full inhale and then a full exhale and relaxing the body, that one breath can accomplish the whole first tetrad. Long breath, short breath, full body, release in the body. You can just whole thing. One tetrad, one breath. And then the second tetrad can just be like, okay, now I'm awake. Now what feels good? Brighten a little bit, quiet the mind. So experience the citta, gladden the citta, immerse the mind in samādhi. And the last step of the I'm not saying that much about samādhi because it's a whole own thing. Formally speaking, here you would cultivate the 4 jhanas, deeply absorbing the heart mind with rapture, with guided and with aimed and sustained thought, with rapture, with happiness, with one-pointedness, ultimately resting in a profound, stabilized mindfulness with equanimity. That's the jhanas. That's the form jhanas, and those are enough here. That's all that is requested here, because this isn't a sequence that says go into the deep immaterial, vast infinite space direction. This is still Ānāpānasati. We're still with the breathing body in a very somatically present kind of way. So you immerse the mind in samādhi, and again, this is the most mysterious. Maybe I keep saying everything is the most mysterious. This one is the most mysterious. Liberate the mind. Citta vimutti. Liberate the citta. What does that mean? But notice that the 4th step in each of the first 3 tetrads is a release step. Still the kaya, bring to stillness the bodily formation, the kaya sankhara, step 4. Bring to stillness the mental formations, or the citta sankhara, step 8. And then liberate the heart, step 12. So, and from here, it turns toward wisdom. Understanding permanence, letting go, release, into the fourth tetrad. But this is the beginning of that turn, is liberate the heart. So we've connected with the body, we've let go of the stuff that constricts the body. We connect with the mind, we let go of the stuff obsessing the mind. And here we've connected with the citta, the heart itself, and then we liberate the heart, which is a version of the same thing. There's no more content to let go of. You've already been in samādhi or touched samādhi. So what is it to liberate the heart? Here. If we think in parallel with the first two tetrads, one way to think about this is that in the first tetrad, we have to experience the bodily formations before we can let go of them. In the first tetrad, it's breathe with the whole body and relax the body or let go of the bodily formations. It implies that you have to come into contact with the bodily formations. You do that as you're breathing into the whole body. In the second tetrad, it's really explicit. Experience the citta sankhara, still the citta sankhara. Here, the experiencing the citta, right, is step 9, and that takes you through into samādhi. So the heart is already settled, and so we don't have to deepen in samādhi. It's not let go of more content so you can deepen in concentration. Now, one way to think about this is now let go of concentration. Let go of that intention to stabilize and become still. Liberate the heart even from that. Or use samādhi to liberate the heart from grasping at any coarser states. That's another way of understanding this. Now that the heart knows what it's like to rest in a very refined steadiness, and you've already come through rapture and pleasure and gladdening the heart, what allure do the more coarse states of other kinds of sensual desire, emotional desire, what pull do those have on the heart in this moment? You're not liberated yet, so you could well get up from meditation and go have a fight with your partner, or go have mad sex, or whatever, get into sensual desire and attachment in various ways. But the heart knows what it's like to be deeply rested here, and so it's actually likely that you won't be deluded by those things when you encounter them. That's the idea here, right? That the heart has tasted profound stability. And so you go out into the world of all the stuff that is messy and confusing, and the heart is unconfused. And so in meditation, coming out of samādhi, and this is a nice thing to do, near the end of your meditation, you've touched into whatever level of stillness, whatever quality of stillness you can. And then maybe you take a fuller breath, and maybe you let your eyes open, and you know in your heart that nothing is really worth being anxious about. That there's no need to believe the stories that fuel anxiety and fear. Because the heart has touched something deep and available, this immersion. And so there's letting go on a couple of levels. You let go of samādhi, so you're not grasping onto states of profound stillness, because you can't be still forever. Right? You got to go cook dinner, take care of the kids, whatever you got to do, finish your PhD, all the things. Get people to vote, but so you have to let go. You let go of the samādhi. But you encourage the heart to realize that it doesn't have to worry about anything, ultimately. And that it knows that because it has tasted gladness and stillness. So releasing the heart.